When coloring with markers, pencils, and watercolor paints, we tend to choose white or ivory cardstock as our canvas. But today on Stamp TV, I'm going to show you how beautiful color can look when used on a piece of Kraft cardstock. And the new stamp set Stately Flowers 6 by Melanie Menchinger is the perfect set for this technique. Let me show you the tools and products you're going to need to do this technique. First, you're going to need some Kraft cardstock, and I'm using the Gina Designs Pure Luxury Kraft brand. Then you're going to need some embossing powder, and I'm using the Ranger Superfine Detail Black Powder. You're also going to need an anti-static pad, and this will remove oil and static from the surface of your card, so your embossing powder will only stick where you want it. Then you're going to need some Versamark ink. You're also going to need some colored ink, and I'm going to use the Gina Designs Dark Sage ink. You can also use black for this particular card. And I'm going to use 2 Copic markers, and the 2 that I'm going to use, first the YG63, which is pea green, and then the R29, which is lipstick red. You're also going to need some stamps, and I've chosen 2 of the stamps from the new Stately Flowers 6 stamp set by Melanie, this beautiful single rose, and then one of the greetings that says, "You make every day worth celebrating." So to begin, you want to start by taking your anti-static pad and rubbing it over the surface of the piece of Kraft cardstock. Then you're going to use the rose stamp, and you're going to stamp that image a little bit off of the center. Actually, I like to stamp it just to the one side. Make sure you've got your stamp inked up real well with Versamark. So I'm going to stamp this right over here, and I'm going to make sure that the stem comes off the piece of cardstock. And you can actually stamp the leaf a little bit off too if you want. And because this is a bigger stamp, you do want to make sure that you press down on all areas of it without rocking it, so you get a complete impression without any double stamping. You get the double stamping by rocking the stamp back and forth, and you don't want to do that. So now I have my Versamark ink on my piece of cardstock. Now, over a little scrap piece of paper, or in this case I'm using an index card, you can use any little folded piece of paper for this, I'm going to sprinkle the fine detail black powder onto this image so that I have the rose covered with embossing powder. I'm just going to blow away any dust. And you might see a couple little spots where it sticks. You can just brush that off. When you're using the Kraft cardstock, sometimes little spots that look like they might be embossing powder are actually little flecks in the Kraft cardstock. So check it out closely. If you wear glasses like I do, put them on to make sure that you're not trying to wipe something off that's not going to come off. Then your next step is going to be to emboss this area, and I'm going to do that with my Marvy Heat tool. And you want to make sure that you don't over emboss it. So once you see it coming up shiny, then it's done. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's shiny. It really kind of makes the whole image get more vibrant. Okay. Now you can see here that the image kind of, can you see that shine? That's how you know it's all done, because it won't look like that until after you heat it. Okay, so now the next step is to stamp the greeting over here in this blank area, and I want to make sure I kind of fiddle with it a little bit to straighten it out, because it can warp a little bit from the heat. Now I love that this set is in clear, because greetings like this, you want to make sure that you stamp them straight, and it's much easier to do when the stamps are clear. So I'm going to ink this up using the Dark Sage ink. And I've chosen Dark Sage because I'm going to color the leaves on this rose in a similar green. And I'm going to stamp that right down here. And just make sure that I press it down everywhere. And there is my greeting. And you can see how nice and crisp our ink is, and also how nice and vibrant it is, even on that Kraft cardstock. Okay, so I'm going to start with the Copic R29, which is lipstick red, and I'm going to color this entire rose. I'm not going to do any fancy shading techniques, and you don't have to use Copic markers for this. You can use Memento markers, or you can use Bic markers, you can use other brands of water-based markers. Maybe you have the Stampin' Up! Brand, or you have Marvy markers. There's so many great markers out there that you can use. But I do like when you use an alcohol marker like Copic or Bic that it's nice and smooth and you don't see any streak marks. One of the things about the Kraft cardstock, or any cardstock that isn't our white cardstock, is that the surface of the cardstock isn't quite as smooth as our white. Our white is an ultra smooth cardstock. So when you're using cardstock that's not quite as smooth, then the alcohol markers are really nice because you won't see any lines at all. It'll just be one solid splash of color. And I do like the original markers because they have that nice fine tip, although many Copic artists out there use the sketch markers, and they have great success using the fine point of the sketch marker. I'm not quite as talented, so I like the little bullet tip on the original markers. Alright, so you can see I have nice solid red. I would definitely make sure that you have a little scrap piece of Kraft cardstock sitting there that you can test your marker out first to make sure it's the right color, because you will find that when you're coloring on white, the color is going to be very true, but when you color on Kraft, it's going to change the color of the marker, so it may not be exactly what you were expecting. So test it on a little scrap piece first. Now I'm going to pick up the YG63 pea green and color in the leaves. And you can see, although this particular marker looks much more vibrant and almost a little bit more yellow when it's colored on white, it just has the perfect nice sage color that I'm looking for when blended with the Kraft. And I'm also going to color these little parts of the rose. These are the little green parts that open up when the flower blooms, so those need to be green. And also this part of the stem. And one more leaf, and you can see how pretty and vibrant this looks even on a piece of cardstock like Kraft. Some of our other colors of cardstock also make beautiful backdrops for coloring, such as our sandy beach. That's a little bit lighter than the Kraft, but it gives you a really nice warm undertone to all of your coloring as well. Okay, so there you can see how beautiful and vibrant that rose looks, even on the Kraft cardstock. Now let me show you a card that I made using this panel. Here is one that I designed using our brand new Love Letters pattern paper as a backdrop. And I just popped that panel right onto some cherry red and used a little bit of Kraft behind the pattern paper and then another piece of cherry red cardstock. And the cherry red seems to really look nice with that particular color red Copic marker. And just a quick note about this little detail here. I was looking for some little embellishment here that wasn't too bulky. And what I did was, you know when you're cutting a panel down for layering and you've got those little thin strips of cardstock laying around? I just took one of those and cut a little piece of it and then layered it onto some cherry red and then popped 3 brads in there, and that just was the perfect little embellishment that I needed to finish off my card. Flowers are perfect images for coloring on Kraft cardstock, and the Stately Flower 6 stamp set will help you create crafty cards for any occasion.